Well, good morning to everyone. It's good to see everyone here today. This weekend, we had a good family weekend. Our 12-year-old son had a football game, and it was in Jenison at the field at the Jenison High School. And it's kind of a fancy field with someone in the booth that's announcing the game, telling you after each play who made the play, who made the catch, who made the run, who made the tackle, who made the pass, that sort of thing, I don't know if it was a middle schooler or high schooler or someone doing that, but just getting some practice in, calling a game, And so Simeon's team was playing against Jenison, and he made this really great tackle on the running back. And I was so proud. He's going to get his name said on the loudspeaker. And he worked hard to make that tackle. And then they called the runner who ran and the tackle made by number such and such, named so-and-so. Wasn't Simeon. Not his number, not his name. The guy called someone else. And the people sitting behind us were like, they started clapping. It was their son that they called. And they're like, they're like, well, I think the other guy was way more involved in that tackle than ours, but we'll take it. We'll take the credit. So, and then Simeon made another play, huge smash, just like blew this guy up. It was so awesome, super loud, super impressive, all by himself. There's no way you're gonna. And then the announcer said, this and tackle made by number such and such, name so-and-so, not Simeon. So, someone else's name. Yeah. And that happened like two more times in the game. Simeon makes these awesome plays and never gets his name mentioned. Credit goes to someone else. Nobody even heard his name said over the loudspeaker. And it's kind of funny, but it's kind of serious too, because we all kind of want some credit every once in a while for the hard work we put in, and it would be nice to get that. But I was thinking about that yesterday and this morning, and wondering, well, what's the most important thing there? Is the most important thing that Simeon gets his name said, that everyone knows his name and hears it? Or is it that he did something important that mattered in the game? I think we all know the answer there. What's important, most important, is that he did the work that mattered and made these contributions to his team and their efforts. But sometimes we might get caught up in the name, in the recognition of it all. And we understand that too as humans. About, I don't know, 20 years ago, there was a man in Wisconsin. His name, well, most people have never heard of him. He was a great man, a father, husband, a preacher, soccer coach, and a man of faith, a man of humility, a good man. And when I was a young preacher in Wisconsin in my early years, he was beginning to become, or I would have liked for him to have been a mentor to me. He was just a quiet man of faith. And I didn't get a lot of chances to interact with him, but when I did, on 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 occasions, we had conversations that were meaningful, that mattered. And when I talked to him, it was like I was the most important person in the world to him. His whole focus and attention was on me, like I mattered or something, like he cared about me. And he was so ardent in his faith and his prayer that mattered to him. And that came through in the way that he preached and the way he talked to me. And he was a mentor. That made a difference in my life. Some years before that, maybe 25 years ago, and before, we were in the youth group. We were teenagers in Wisconsin. And one day, a new guy and a gal came to church. They were some years older than us. He had just graduated from a master's program in Michigan, where he was from, and they were moving to Wisconsin. We were teenagers. They were in their 20s. They were cool, and they had a lot going on in their life. This guy, his name, most people have never heard of him, but he meant something to me, to us. He invested in the youth of our church in little ways. Nothing grandiose, nothing super impressive, nothing like a gigantic church program or something, but time, attention, conversation. Some of the most important conversations I had in my life were with this man. You've never heard of him, but he mattered to me. One of those conversations was about Tabitha, and I'm thinking about marrying Tabitha, asking her to marry me. And Chris was just like, well, duh, yeah, that's what you should do. If you knew him, you would be able to, but most people don't know him. About 35 years ago, when I was a boy, about the same age as my kids, there was a woman in our church. Her name, well, most people have never heard of her, but she was a godly woman. I was a boy, and she was a very faithful, devout Christian. Didn't have an easy life, a woman of humble means, and most days she would go to work, and her husband would stay home and see how drunk he could get. Not an easy life that she lived. Very difficult, very challenging. But she loved the Lord. She was faithful. And for some reason, she cared about the kids in our church. And she invested time and energy into those people. Me, one of them. And I remember her teaching our Bible classes when we were in elementary school. They weren't awesome. It wasn't a huge production. It wasn't impressive. But she was there, and she showed up, and she did it. And I remember what that meant to us, to me, as a kid. We notice, oh, this person wants to teach us. The reason I know and have memorized all the books of the Bible is because of this woman. She would, every once in a while, she would say, hey, let's get together after school or on a Saturday, and I'll just take you to the coffee shop. I'll buy you a donut or something. She would just go there. We would talk. I have no idea what we talked about, but I know it meant something to me. It mattered. These small things that people did. What I was seeing is a person that cared, a person whose faith mattered to them, and who was willing to do these small things in life for other people. That mattered to me in my life. You've never heard of these people. If I said their name, it wouldn't matter. But it mattered to me. About 2,900 years ago, a little bit farther back, there was a little girl, and her country and her people got caught up in some war, some battle with the neighboring country to the north. She was an Israelite, and the people to the north were called Syria or Aram. And her village, was taken over, and she was taken captive. One of many. She was taken captive by the army, taken back to this foreign land, Aram. Became a slave, a servant to someone in that country. And it turned out that the person to whom she was in service, indebted, enslaved to, was this great, famous, well-known warrior named Naaman. Everyone knew Naaman. If you don't know him, then what are you doing? You haven't been around. You're not paying attention. There's the king, and then there's Naaman, and everyone knows who those two people are. You might know other people. Everyone knows who this guy is. Beloved by the people, hero, just awesome career, awesome life. And his name's on the marquee everywhere, Naaman the Great, Captain Naaman, that sort of thing. Well, she ended up being this girl. Her name, well, most people never heard of her. She ended up being a slave to Naaman. And Naaman, for all of his greatness, had one weakness that he'd probably prefer not having, and it's leprosy. He had a skin condition somewhere on his body, an ailment. And this girl noticed that. And of all the things she could have done, she saw that this man, her captor, had leprosy. And she could have been happy about that, rejoicing, clapping her hands. I'm so glad you have leprosy. I hope you have it more. I hope you get more of it. Hope you have it forever, But that's not what it was in this girl's heart. What was in this girl's heart was compassion, was love, even love for an enemy. And she told Naaman's wife, I know a guy. He's a pretty big deal. He's from my area. He's a prophet. He could heal the leprosy. And she tells Naaman, and Naaman tells the king, and the king says, yeah, go for it. I'll give you the letter. Here, to bring this to the king of Israel. He brings a bunch of riches and wealth and all of his entourage and stuff. It's Naaman, he doesn't just travel alone and under the radar. All right, so Naaman's coming. Here he comes into town, goes to the king. We heard the story today. The king of Israel is insulted. First of all, saying, why would you ask, am I God? Am I to be in charge of who lives or dies or who's healed or not healed? And second of all, is this king of Aram just messing with me? Is he trying to start a fight? Is this some way to mock me? You're sending your guy to my country to get healed by one of my prophets? What does that mean? What are you doing? So he tears his clothes. But Elisha the prophet, the one who had received the mantle of the great prophet Elijah, enters into the sandals of Elijah's ministry. He gets word that the king has torn his garments over this, and he sends a message to the king, let him come. I'm fine with it. Elisha, too, looked at this situation with compassion, even though it's the enemy of the state, Naaman. But Elisha says, let him come. Let him be healed. And so Naaman's getting what he wants. Naaman's a good guy. Naaman is not a bad guy. He was kind of full of himself. He is well known. It's hard to fight that pride and ego when you're the hero, But he's not a bad guy. In fact, God had given him victories in the past, Blessed him. It's not that God's against him. But he has his own issues. Pride, ego, probably the main ones. Not humbled, really, by his leprosy. But Naaman then goes to Elisha's house. And it wasn't enough for Naaman to just seek a healing. That was part of it. He wants to be healed, Of course, he wants to be healed of leprosy. But he also doesn't mind having that healing take place on his reality TV show, right? Let's have a little publicity here. Let's bring everyone with me. Let's get it all going. Let's have this big public thing that he's imagining in his mind. A great prophet healing me in front of everyone. That would be the best way to be healed. I have a name to uphold, Everyone knows me. My name's Naaman. I'm the captain. And he gets there, ready for this big moment. All the people recording, their cameras going. And Elisha never even comes out of the house. Sends only some messengers. Says, Naaman, thanks for coming. Go dip in the Jordan River 7 times. You'll be healed. Naaman's ticked off. Because he wanted to be healed. But there's one thing that he wanted a little bit more than that. It's for his name to be glorified, right? Everyone knows Naaman. Everyone knows his name. And even more people will know after he's been healed in front of all these people by the great prophet Elisha. But he's not getting that out of this situation. Elisha asked him to do a humble, small thing in the Jordan River. And Naaman's ticked. If I wanted to do that, there's way better rivers in Damascus, he says, that I could go in. This Jordan River, why would I do that? This water is not even that awesome. Not impressive. And so he gets mad and he starts going home. Until one of his servants goes up to him while he's on his way home, sulking, steaming, angry. This servant, the name, most people have never heard of him. But they went up to Naaman and they said, if he would ask you to do something really hard and difficult and challenging and impressive, you would have done it, right? Yeah, I would have done it. Well, then why not when he asks you to do this simple, small thing, this humble thing? And Naaman, to his credit, let those words sink into his heart. And on that day, his heart turned, became humble, and he did a humble thing. And he went in the Jordan River, and he dipped 7 times, and he was healed. A lot of people think this is a story about Elisha and about Naaman, and it is. I mean, after all, those are the names that are in the text, right? But maybe it's a story about these people with no names and their faith as well. The girl servant in the beginning of the story, the servant at the end of the story, neither of them mentioned by name in the text. The people recording this might have even tried to figure out what is their name. Well, that's lost in history, lost in the tradition as these stories get passed down. Nobody knows their name. Nobody knows their name. Except a few people, like Naaman. Naaman knows their name because they did something important to him, for him in his life. And more important than that, their names are known to God. These faithful people that will never have the notoriety, never have the publicity, never have the fame, the popularity. God knows each and every one of their names. They matter. They're of great importance to him in the kingdom. And those 3 people that I talked about at the beginning, and I could have done 100 more, the names of those people, while unknown to you, are known to me. And more importantly, they're known to God. And they have done great things in the kingdom of God, even just affecting one person in their faith in this lifetime. And as we gather as a church this morning, we gather as these people. These people who are generally mostly going to be unknown to most people in our lifetime. Nobody's famous. Nobody has notoriety. But we can do things that matter in the kingdom of God. We can, and we have, and we do. And I have these stories, and I know stories about many different stories about people in this room who have been that small, humble, impacting faith in people's lives. The stuff we do matters. Doesn't matter if we get credit for it. Doesn't matter if anyone knows our name. The stuff we do, even and especially the little things, they matter. This is what Paul says. I want to end with this verse. Paul, as he's celebrating in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, the resurrection of our Lord and what that means for the universe, for the cosmos, the impact, the ripple, the wake of it all of what that means. He says at the very end, his concluding words, after he's talked about this amazing, the resurrection of Jesus and the resurrection of all of us that's to come in the future, and what that's like and what that means. The way that he finishes that entire argument, as he says in the last verse of chapter 15, therefore, my church family, be steadfast, be immovable, always abound in the work of the Lord, knowing that your toil, your work, is not in vain in the Lord. Paul says because of the resurrection, every single thing we do, even the smallest things, they matter. They matter to God. They're not done in vain. Nothing is done in vain if you do it in the Lord, in faith. When you encourage some of the kids in our church, they will remember that when they're 45 years old and beyond. These things matter. When we do that for each other, these things matter. Don't pass up those opportunities to do the small things for Jesus, because they have lasting impact on the faith and the life of others. So I want to encourage us all this morning to not seek the name, but to seek the opportunities to do good works for the Lord in his name, because those will never be done in vain. Let's stand and sing.